Welcome back. We're ending on the scary stuff. Nuclear war, AI, and why human judgment still matters.
And somehow it gets scarier when you realize the launch chain can be so short.
That part always gets me. One person can basically start the end of the world.
Not even a committee, not even a dramatic room full of suits.
No board meeting, just one deeply stressed human being.
And that's exactly why the AI question feels so uncomfortable.
Because people want to hand the most dangerous decision to the smartest machine.
The sentence itself sounds insane when you say it slowly.
But it's not sci-fi anymore, it's already in the conversation.
She was basically saying the defense world has been doing machine thinking forever.
The weird part is the origin story is so old school, like pencils and people doing calculations.
Computers being humans is such a ridiculous historical fact.
Imagine your job title is literally computer, and you are just a person with math anxiety.
And then von Neumann shows up like, I want a machine that thinks for itself.
That is the craziest part. He beat the machine, and then the machine beat him.
That moment is almost mythic, like the species realizing something changed.
And from there, the whole military AI pipeline starts looking less futuristic and more inevitable.
Which is why the book keeps circling back to the same fear. Speed plus power equals catastrophe.
And people still talk about it like abstract policy when it's literally milliseconds and mistakes.
The frightening thing is how plausible an accidental chain reaction sounds now.
ChatGPT even spits out a nuclear apocalypse scenario if you ask it weirdly enough.
Which is both hilarious and deeply cursed.
The internet's least qualified oracle is like, yes, extinction seems possible.
But she pushed back hard on the idea that AI is currently controlling those systems.
Right, because the command and control layers are still classified and weirdly analog.
That's the detail that surprised me most. The missiles are not just some fully digital spaceship.
They're navigating with star sighting, which feels ancient and futuristic at once.
A civilization-ending weapon looking at the stars is such a bleak little poetry moment.
That image is absurd, like the apocalypse doing astronomy homework.
But that analog design exists partly because people don't want one hacked system ending everything.
Which means the technology is already built around fear of future technology.
And then you get to her bigger point. Maybe the answer is not more weapons at all.
0 is the sane number, honestly.
She did say maybe 10 for everybody, which is still a wild compromise.
Congratulations. The apocalypse is now capped at a socially acceptable amount.
That line is horrifying, but also exactly how policy people sound sometimes.
What I liked is that she never framed it as doom for doom's sake.
She kept calling it a man-made problem with a man-made solution.
That optimism felt real, not naive.
Because she pairs the fear with agency, and that's why the book lands differently.
Although I do think the probability argument is chilling.
The longer the weapons exist, the more likely some mad king or reckless state does something stupid.
And history keeps proving that one unstable person can do enormous damage.
She was basically asking us to stop treating enemies like destiny.
Which is a very non-internet thought, by the way.
The internet loves permanent villains. It feeds on that energy.
But her anthropologist point was interesting, that humans can read a stranger as threat or ally.
And we don't fully know why some people choose suspicion and others choose trust.
But we do know people can be trained out of reflexive hostility.
That felt like the deepest part of the conversation, honestly.
Because it links war, politics, and everyday psychology in one ugly loop.
And it's not even abstract when you hear her talk about survivors.
The Nagasaki survivor meeting sounded like it hit her in the chest.
Imagine meeting someone who lived through that, then realizing your own research is now a human face.
And then on the other side, the person who wired the bomb was part of her reporting too.
That contrast is brutal, because both lives are inside the same history.
Do you think that changed how she sees the book itself?
Completely, because the reporting stops being a clean argument and becomes grief with context.
That's the thing about good nonfiction. It keeps ruining your easy opinions.
Yes, it's basically anti-comfort reading.
And she kept coming back to legacy, which I thought was beautiful.
The old people looking at her, knowing they're near the end, that's such a heavy moment.
Especially when they've spent their lives inside classified systems and never fully told the story.
I loved that she saw her job as getting Grandpa's story on the record.
And sometimes Grandpa's story is a binder at a book signing.
That image is so funny until you realize it's a nuclear submarine binder.
Family heirlooms, just a little top secret.
But that's why she trusts the long view over the headline.
Because the long view is where the guilt, pride, confusion, and regret all show up.
And she said the same thing about the people she interviews. The mission matters, but the life matters more.
That's also where the CIA and military stories get morally messy fast.
She kept drawing that line between people who can separate heart from mission and people who can't.
And she basically admitted she could never do that kind of work herself.
Which I respect, because not everyone should be built for the same darkness.
That's a good way to put it. Built for different darknesses.
Democracy kind of needs that range, even the uncomfortable parts.
Exactly. Not everybody is meant to be a knight. Some people are the witness.
And some people are the bridge builder, which is maybe the more important job.
The last question she answered was pretty revealing too.
The one about what she changed her mind about?
Yeah, because she used to cast people too quickly when they ignored her.
And then the man emailed back saying his wife had cancer.
That's such a humbling correction.
It rewrites the whole chapter, literally and emotionally.
That feels like the thesis of the series, honestly.
People become enemies fastest when we stop asking what else is true.
And maybe the antidote is just one more bridge. One more question.
Which is a pretty good note to end the whole run on.
Especially before we all spiral into star-guided missile anxiety.
Honestly, I'm never looking at the sky the same way again.
Same, but I'm also leaving this with more respect for people doing the hard reporting.
Me too. Because the whole point was never just danger, it was responsibility.
And that's the series. We went from power to fear to the human being inside it.
Thanks for riding through all three with us, and for staying with the uncomfortable stuff.
Seriously, take care of each other and keep building bridges instead of targets.
Until next time.
Welcome back. This one gets into AI, nuclear command, and the emotional wreckage behind secrets.
And the wild part is how fast all of it collapses into one terrifying chain.
The chain being one person, one button, and a lot of faith in systems.
Which is insane when you hear her say the president can authorize launch alone.
Alone is doing a lot of work there, honestly.
And then you add AI into that picture, and everybody starts acting calm for no reason.
Calm in the exact way people are calm before a plane hits turbulence.
What got me was her pushback on ChatGPT, like, hold on, this thing is reading the internet.
Right. And the internet has definitely never been dramatic about nuclear war.
Exactly. It probably swallowed a little Terminator and called it foresight.
But she did make a real point, though, about how classified command systems still feel analog.
That part fascinated me, the missiles being guided by star sighting like ancient navigation.
Bro, civilization-ending tech using the stars is such a cursed sentence.
It sounds like a mythology class built by defense contractors.
And maybe that analog layer is the only reason the whole thing hasn't already gone weird.
Or it's the reason we keep pretending weird can't happen until it does.
That was the bigger thing for me, like, do we actually trust AI more than humans?
She basically said the point is not trust. The point is that the systems are already moving there.
Which is the most annoying sentence in the world because it's never fully future. It's always now.
And the scariest part is that the future keeps arriving in pieces.
Do you think her zero weapons argument actually lands with people outside the policy bubble?
I think it lands more when she stops sounding like a policy person and starts sounding like a mother.
That was huge, honestly, because she kept connecting the abstract number to real human stupidity.
Real human stupidity is basically the engine of history.
And occasionally the engine of civilization-ending decisions.
But she wasn't fatalistic, which I respected a lot.
She kept saying man-made problem, man-made solution.
That line is simple, but it carries the whole book.
I still think the Mad King scenario is the hardest thing to dismiss.
Because probability is boring until it becomes destiny.
Exactly, like one damaged leader and suddenly everybody's pretending it's unthinkable.
What I liked is that she didn't say humans are evil, just that humans are fragile.
That's way more uncomfortable because fragility is normal.
And that anthropology detour was actually so useful. The hunter who sees a stranger as threat or ally.
Human beings are basically a decision tree with feelings.
That's embarrassingly accurate.
It also explains why she keeps talking about enemies versus opponents.
Because once everyone becomes an enemy, you get nuclear policy and social media in the same brain.
That is a horrible but excellent sentence.
And her whole point is that people can be trained to think differently.
Not brainwashed, just trained?
Right, trained toward seeing a teammate instead of a target.
That feels almost radical now.
It really does, which is depressing in a very modern way.
The emotional core for me was her meeting the Nagasaki survivor.
Yeah, that went from history to grief in 1 second.
The fact that the woman was a baby when the bomb dropped is still unbelievable to me.
And then to learn the survivors carried stigma too, like they were treated as contaminated.
That's what human beings do. We survive the disaster and then invent a second one.
She was holding that meeting with both hands, basically, one for the source and one for the survivor.
That image was crazy because it turned journalism into a moral balancing act.
It is a moral balancing act, especially when the people involved are carrying decades of classified life.
And she doesn't pretend to have clean answers, which I actually trust more.
Clean answers are for people who haven't looked at anything difficult.
Or people on TV with perfect lighting.
What hit me hardest was the man who wired the Nagasaki bomb being one of her key sources.
That is such a brutal full circle to live inside.
And then he dies, and the story becomes about consequence instead of just role.
She keeps returning to that idea that one person can be both a perpetrator and a victim of history.
Which is why she keeps saying the human life arc matters more than the single mission.
That's the maturity in the reporting, honestly.
And probably why the older sources look at her like they're handing over a legacy.
Did you notice how much trust sits underneath all of that?
Totally, because without trust, nobody tells you the real story behind the story.
The thing families definitely do not discuss over dinner.
Unless someone shows up with a binder from the basement.
That part was so great, random grandfather archaeology.
But it shows how much hidden history is just sitting inside ordinary families.
And how badly people want context when somebody is gone.
Especially when the person was part of something huge and morally messy.
I loved her answer to the closing question about changing her mind.
The one where she thought the general was the bad guy and then his wife had cancer?
Yeah, that was such a brutal reminder that silence usually has a reason.
And she went back and rewrote the chapter, which is integrity, not ego.
That is way harder than just staying smug and being wrong.
Staying smug is always available, sadly.
Her whole worldview feels like a defense of bridge building in a world addicted to enemies.
Which is why this episode lands as the real payoff of the whole series.
We started with power, then fear, and ended with people.
And that is always the only part that actually matters.
Thanks for riding through all three with us and staying with the uncomfortable stuff.
Seriously, take care of each other and keep building bridges instead of targets.
Until next time.
Welcome back, and this one is about nuclear speed, AI, and the people carrying the secret weight.
It is also about how fast one decision can outrun humanity.
That 72-minute idea is honestly terrifying because it sounds almost casual.
Right, like civilization as a timer setting is unhinged.
And the wild part is the launch power can sit with one president.
That is the sentence that should make everybody sit up straighter.
Or spill their drink and immediately become a policy expert.
The internet would do that in 4 minutes flat.
What got me was her saying the systems are still weirdly analog in places.
The apocalypse apparently still uses stars for navigation.
Imagine building doomsday tech and then looking up like a sailor.
That detail is insane because it makes the machine feel older than the fear.
And that was her point about control too, I think.
She was basically saying the system resists takeover because it distrusts takeover.
But then you bring AI into it and everything gets slippery again.
Exactly, because AI is the one thing that makes the old guard look quaint.
Do you buy the chatbot scenario where AI grabs the warheads and ends everything?
I buy it as imagination before I buy it as reality.
That is the most dangerous thing about it, though, that it feels plausible enough.
She pushed back hard, and I think she was right to.
Because the real systems are more classified than a movie plot?
And because the thing people forget is how fragmented the nuclear world already is.
9 nuclear powers, not one giant brain in the sky.
And if AI becomes smarter than our command structures, that is a huge problem.
It is wild how every attempt to make things safer creates a new failure mode.
Humanity loves a backup system until the backup system becomes the threat.
What I liked is that she kept dragging it back to history instead of hype.
The von Neumann story was such a clean way in.
Wait, the fact that computers were literally human beings at one point is hilarious and sad.
People really were the original hardware.
Then suddenly you get vacuum tubes, giant rooms, and a mind trying to beat the machine.
And then the machine starts winning, which is the part everybody rushes past.
That feels like the birth of our current panic, honestly.
Yeah, because once defense starts funding intelligence, the line between clever and lethal disappears.
And then we act shocked that the military got there first.
As if they would politely wait for Silicon Valley to catch up.
No chance. They were already in the basement with the money.
The part about DARPA saying the battlefield is no place for humans was chilling.
Because it sounds efficient until you remember humans are the point.
Or at least they are supposed to be.
Do you think we overrate the idea of human judgment in these systems?
I think we underrate how messy human judgment is, which is different.
That is fair, because she was basically saying the mess is the safeguard too.
And then there is the insane fact that submarines can launch from underwater.
That technology is basically a villain origin story with paperwork.
And star charts, apparently.
The most advanced weapon on Earth still trusting the sky is a wild image.
It almost feels poetic if it were not so horrifying.
Her real warning was probably about scale, not just hardware.
Exactly, because even if one system is hardened, the world has too many systems.
Too many nuclear players and not enough confidence that any of them are calm forever.
That was the Mad King point, and that one landed hard.
Because probability is rude like that, it only gets worse with time.
The longer weapons exist, the more chances there are for one broken person.
And she was not even saying it as doom, more like arithmetic.
Numbers can be colder than ideology sometimes.
I also thought the bridge between war and human nature was the deepest part.
Because she refused to pretend war is some alien thing dropped on us from space.
She went all the way back to hunters and tribes, which I did not expect.
That idea that a stranger can be a threat or a teammate is basically the whole species.
And maybe the whole tragedy, too.
She kept coming back to the possibility that people can learn differently.
Which is the least glamorous but most useful idea in the whole conversation.
Nobody puts that on a t-shirt, but they should.
And that brings us to the part I cannot stop thinking about, the human cost of secrets.
The woman in Brussels was the emotional center of the whole episode.
A survivor from Nagasaki meeting someone who wrote about the same history feels almost unbearable.
And then finding out one source helped wire the bomb itself is just devastating.
That is the part that breaks your clean moral categories instantly.
Because then it is not monsters and saints, it is people inside systems.
Do you think that is why she gets so emotional when she reports?
Absolutely, because she is meeting history as a person, not a citation.
And that changes what a book is, because the page cannot hold all that grief alone.
I loved how she talked about interviewing people in their 80s and 90s.
They are basically handing you their legacy before they disappear.
That is a heavy kind of trust.
And then there was Billy Waugh, which is such a brutal counterweight.
The man apparently killed more people than cancer, which is a sentence that should not exist.
That line is so dark it needs its own warning label.
But it shows how her work lives in the space between violence and memory.
And how she does not flatten people even when their lives are horrifying.
That is the real discipline, honestly.
The spouse conversation part also felt weirdly important.
Sprout's privilege was the most married sentence ever spoken.
She said it like every long marriage has a legal loophole for trauma.
But that sounding board thing matters because writing is emotional accounting.
You come home and ask someone to help you interpret your own reaction.
That is probably why her next book is going to go deeper into cause and effect.
I think so too, because she finally said the point is consequences on both sides.
Which is very unsexy and very true.
The other thing I keep circling is her answer about changing her mind.
Oh, the general who ignored her and then turned out to have a dying wife.
That story is such a clean takedown of your own assumptions.
She literally rewrote the chapter because reality was more complicated than the villain version.
That is the humility the whole episode kept asking for.
And maybe the whole series, too.
We started with power, then fear, and ended with people.
And that is the only place the conversation should ever land.
If you made it through all three, you are officially one of us now.
Or at least emotionally drafted into the chaos.
Seriously, though, take care of each other and keep building bridges instead of targets.
And we will see you next time.
Welcome back. We're ending on the wildest part. AI, nuclear command, and the human cost of secrecy.
Yeah, because the scary thing is not the bomb. It's how fast the button can move.
And how little daylight there is between one person deciding and everyone else reacting.
That's the part that never stops feeling insane to me.
Right. And then you add AI into that mix and people start acting like it's science fiction.
Meanwhile, the military has been doing computer stuff since computers were people.
That's such a horrifyingly funny sentence.
But it matters because the whole lineage goes from pencils to vacuum tubes to systems making faster calls than humans.
And that makes the AI panic feel less like hype and more like a trajectory.
Still, I don't buy the easy jump from chatbot to apocalypse.
No, but the point is the chatbot can imagine it because the idea already lives in the system.
Exactly. And that's where the real issue is. Command systems, classification, old analog hardware, all of it.
The weird part is that the most advanced weapons can still depend on ancient navigation ideas.
Like literally looking at the stars to find a target.
That's such a brutal contrast, honestly.
Human beings really took stargazing and turned it into doomsday logistics.
And she kept coming back to the same fear, that the system is too fast for human wisdom.
Which is why her optimism lands harder than her warnings.
Because she's not saying panic, she's saying reduce the weapons.
Or at least stop pretending a bigger pile makes anybody safer.
13,000 nukes is apparently not the same as calm preparedness.
Wild concept, I know.
What I kept thinking about was her point that war is human, but so is restraint.
And that hunter-gatherer idea was sneaky good, because it shows the choice is still there.
Enemy or teammate, that first interpretation changes everything.
Yeah. And the whole series kept arguing that point without saying it directly.
Even the stories about survivors and the people who built the bomb were about that same bridge.
That Brussels moment clearly hit her because history stopped being abstract.
A living survivor in front of you will do that to a person.
And then the guy who wired the bomb becomes part of the same moral universe.
That's the thing. Nobody is just one chapter.
Which is why her best answer was basically keep reporting, keep listening, keep revising.
And maybe keep changing your mind when new facts show up, which is rare and beautiful.
Especially in public, where everyone wants to cosplay certainty.
Public certainty is usually just private confusion with better lighting.
That's annoyingly good.
The most human thing here was probably the least glamorous thing, talking to people honestly.
Yeah, and letting those conversations change you instead of performing neutrality.
That's a good place to leave this series, I think.
If nothing else, let's leave with this. Bridges are cheaper than war.
Much cheaper and a lot less final.
We'll be back soon and hopefully with fewer apocalypse vibes.
Seriously, thank you for riding through all 3 episodes with us.
And take care of your people because that's the whole point anyway.